Are we close to equating democracy with capitalism?
Oh, I mean, I think that's the biggest lie of all, actually. The biggest lie of all is that capitalism is democracy. We have no way of understanding democracy outside of the market, just as we have no understanding of how to understand freedom outside of market values. Look,
explain that. What do you mean
yeah,
outside of market
look,
values?
I mean, you know, when Margaret Thatcher married Ronald Reagan,
metaphorically,
two things happened. One, there was this assumption that the government was evil, except when it regulated its power to benefit the rich. So it wasn't a matter of smashing the government, as Reagan seemed to suggest. It was a matter of rearranging it and reconfiguring it so it served the wealthy, the elites, and the corporate, of course, you know, those who run mega corporations. But Thatcher said something else that's particularly interesting in this discussion. She said there's no such thing as society. There are only individuals and families. And so what we begin to see is the emergence of a kind of ethic, a survival of the fittest ethic, that legitimates the most incredible forms of cruelty, that seems to suggest that freedom in this discourse of getting rid of society, getting rid of the social, that discourse is really only about self-interest, that possessive individualism is now the only virtue that matters. So freedom, which is essential to any notion of democracy, now becomes nothing more than a matter of pursuing your own self-interest. No society can survive under those conditions. Under this system, democracy is basically like the lotto. You know, you go in, you put a coin in, and if you're lucky, you win something. If you don't, then you become something else.
So then why? When I talk about the urgency in your writing, your forthcoming book opens with this sentence: America is descending into madness. Now, don't you think many people will read that as hyperbole?
Sometimes in the exaggerations there are great truths. And it seems to me that what's unfortunate here is that's not an exaggeration. We have an economic system that in fact has caused a crisis in democracy. What we haven't addressed is the underlying consensus that informs that crisis. What you have is basically a transgression against the very basic ideals of democracy. We have lost what it means to be connected to democracy. And I think that's coupled with a cultural apparatus, a culture, an educative culture, a mode of politics in which people now have gone through this for so long that it's become normalized. I mean, it's hard to imagine life beyond capitalism. You know, it's easier to imagine the death of the planet than it is to imagine the death of capitalism.